Hi guys, if you can hear me. If anyone can hear me, just pop some in the Q&A chat. Just want to make sure that we're live before we start the presentation. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes, and then we'll get started. Okay, 2 more minutes, and then we'll begin. I can see people still coming in and attending and stuff, so let them join, and then we'll begin the presentation. Okay, 1 more minute, and we shall begin. Okay, let's make a start. So first of all, thank you everyone for coming out on this evening. I don't know what time it is there, but it's 7 o'clock here in the UK. So thank you for getting your evening to attend this presentation. Quick introduction to myself. My name is Neil McLaughlin. I'm the UK Field CTO for Nerdio. I only been in the position for a few weeks now, so I think I'm coming week number 5. I think it is for me. So I'm still getting to grips with things. So this is my very first Nerdio tech presentation. So Baz Van Kamp, my colleague, normally does all these. So I think going forward we try to do these at least once a month, just to sort of do a bit of a deep dive into sort of Windows Virtual Desktop technologies and how Nerdio can help you and teach you a bit more about Windows Virtual Desktop essentially. So the topic, which will have a bit more about me first, obviously. So yeah, let's say my name is Neil McLaughlin, UK Field CTO from Nerdio. As you can tell, I'm from Manchester, so that's my hometown. That's essentially where I've lived all my life and where I live today. So you'll see, obviously, Manchester United, and that's probably about half an hour away from where I live currently. I'm a Microsoft MVP. It's my very first year as a Microsoft MVP, so very honoured to be part of the MVP program. So we will go through to the next slide. Let me get it back up. Okay. Okay, so first of all, a bit about Nerdio. So as I said, I've been working for Nerdio for 5 weeks now. I initially came to work for Nerdio just because I love the technology, I love the people, I love what they're doing. I've been deploying Windows Virtual Desktop since day one, essentially. I know how difficult it is to manage, I know how difficult it is to deploy. And I've been watching the guys from Nerdio for the past year and watching them develop and seeing what they do. So when I got the call to come and join Nerdio, it was, didn't have even to think about it. It was a definite yes. So one of the reasons why we'll show you tonight, Nerdio, what I think just they make the difficult very, very, very easy. And so that's a quick introduction to us. I'll just give you the quick value-added style that we do. So basically, the main thing that brought me to Nerdio and our customers love is the ease of management. So we make managing Windows Virtual Desktop very, very easy, essentially. Natively, it can be a bit difficult, but we kind of fill that gap and make it extremely easy to deploy. So you don't need to be sort of highly skilled in Azure. You don't need to know all about Windows Virtual Desktop. We just give you a nice GUI interface to make deploy and managing your desktops easy. So as I mentioned, you don't need to do automation, you don't need to know lots of PowerShell, although if you do know PowerShell, you can add that into product to make it even better for you. You don't need to know all the ARM, JSON, all that stuff. We make things very intuitive via the GUI. And we also have lots of really, really good auto-scaling mechanisms. So we find that running your Windows Virtual Desktop using Nerdio actually saves you money and doesn't cost you more money, purely because we have really, really good auto-scaling stuff in there. So if you've not seen that before, reach out to myself or Baz and we'll be happy to give you a demo, but it's very, very, very impressive and can save you a lot of time and effort on your Windows Virtual Desktop deployments. And also security as well. So built into the Nerdio console, we have lots of RBAC roles. So you can assign sort of first level help desk engineers, right? You can even get end users the ability to restart their own desktops and do some basic tasks. So and it also sits within its own application within your own Azure subscription as well. So security is always at the forefront of everyone's minds, and it was also. So we also have that as number one priority. Okay, so let's go to tonight's agenda for a bit. So essentially what we're going to talk about is MSIX App Attach. And the reason why I picked this presentation tonight is because it's getting a lot of love recently. Purely because, as we'll discover, I'll go through the presentations later, but deploying applications has always been difficult, right? It's always the bane of the IT admin's job. It's also the thing I found in my past experience, the thing that gets probably the least focused. It's only until after you deployed your infrastructure and after you started testing that you find out that you have all the problems with the applications. I don't know if you guys see all that, but personally, it's every single project that I've worked on, the applications bit has always been the most difficult bit. I'd probably say at least 3/4 of each project level that I've worked on, it's always the applications. Deploying infrastructure is easy. Doing applications, different story. MSIX App Attach hopefully makes that easier. So this is the introduction, obviously. Then we'll do a lot of demos tonight. So I don't want this to be sort of lots of slides with lots of boring text on it. So I want to try and make it as interactive as possible. I have recorded some demos for stuff which takes a bit longer, but we'll try and do as much live stuff as we can within the timescales that we've got. I believe we've got about an hour, but it may be shorter, maybe longer. We'll just have to see how we get on. Okay, and obviously at the end we've got an opportunity for lots of Q&A as well. Okay. So before I begin, let's just make sure there's nothing in the Q&A. Good. Okay, so let me tell you a bit of a story. This story is part of the reasons why I'm doing Windows Virtual Desktop right now. So what I'm seeing at the moment is what I was told probably around 18 months ago. So this story, not sure if anyone can guess what it is, but I'll go through it all. So essentially, what this story is I was sat in a bar in Lisbon with Jim Moyle. And Jim Moyle had recently was finishing off all the FS Logic stuff and was getting started with Windows Virtual Desktop. And Jim was giving me the whole story about what his future vision is for Windows Virtual Desktop. Because obviously you've got Windows Virtual Desktop, which was at that time was just very, very, very early days. And then you had the FS Logics bit, which sort of built upon Windows Virtual Desktop. So when he mentions the fact that, okay, if you look at separating your operating system, your applications and your profiles, just think about how powerful that could be. Because managing VDI images is a difficult thing, mainly because, as we'll find out later in the presentation, historically, image bloat is a real thing. It's getting better, and we'll see one of the reasons why. But certainly for me, I've been doing VDI probably for 10 years now, and the applications and managing the apps, it's just been a nightmare compared to physical deployments. So physical deployments, you can put individual applications onto your different separate PCs and you don't have the problem. The problem with VDI deployments is you need that central image that everybody's going to use. Okay, so then you have, okay, if I put application A on, well, application B is going to break it. I also need to run, the marketing department needs to run this version, and then finance department needs this version, and it just becomes a whole big mess. I've worked in enterprise environments, and I'm sure a lot of you have, where we have in excess of like 1,000 applications. There's some environments where you can have potentially 10,000 applications. Some of those applications the developer left 10 years ago and no one knows what it does. Some of those applications have a lot of compatibility issues. Some of those applications are written in Visual C++, some of them .NET applications. It's just a whole big mess out there. So hopefully, if we manage to separate everything, it gets better. So we'll see as we go through the presentation. So let me go through this again. Okay, so as I just talked about, what causes the IT pros the most pain? Top one for me, I'm sure a lot of you agree, is the applications. They are what the end users interact with the desktop. Okay, so if your applications are broken, you might as well not bother having a desktop. So if your applications are slow, it's going to be the end user experience that's going to suffer, and then the user going to complain, and you might as well not do it in the first place. So we need to get the applications right. And it's the bit which most of the time, as I said before, gets the least focus. So hopefully that will change in the future, and it certainly needs a lot more attention when it comes to VDI. Profiles. We all know profiles used to be a pain before FS Logics. FS Logics was really, really good for profiles. I know a lot of you used to work in Citrix environments, for example, or RDS, where you had roaming profiles where you're constantly resetting users' profiles and fixing weird applications issues with profiles and stuff. When FS Logics came along, that fixed a lot of that, purely because of the way it worked. We weren't doing profile streaming anymore. We weren't loading and unloading profiles. We're basically just redirecting profiles with a file filter, essentially. And a lot of those issues that would suffer from for many, many years went away. Now, FS Logic doesn't work exactly the same way as MSIX Attach, but they are quite similar in what they do. So I'm hoping over time that the MSIX App Attach will do what the application does, what it did to profiles. It takes away all that pain and management. So I think for what I've seen so far, before I started writing this presentation, I didn't have a lot of experience on MSIX App Attach. I like what I see, purely because of the simplicity of what it gives for you. So, as I said, what if we could separate all these? Well, we can do now. That vision that Jim told me about 18 months ago is here today. So let's see what it can do for us. So what we're going to cover in today's presentation, we're going to cover obviously what is MSIX Attach. We're going to look at why you should be using it, how it works under the hood. We're going to go through some of the requirements, how to package an application to prepare it, some of the certificate stuff, what is the difference between the Vhdx and a sim file, and then basically we're going to do some conversions. We're going to cover some common problems and tips, and then obviously we're going to see how Nerdio can sort of help with that process. So a lot to cover with a lot of demos, and we've got about 45 minutes left. So let's see how far we get, whether we run out of time or whether we go under, but we'll see. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to try and cover as lot of demos as possible to make it as interesting as we can. So the demos that we're going to do, we're going to sort of create some certificates. We are going to create a MSIX File Share using Azure files. We're going to convert an existing application to MSIX, then we're going to upload and migrate that application to Vhd using Nerdio, and we're also going to assign the host pool using Nerdio as well, the application to host pool, all within 45 minutes. So let's try and see if we can fit all that in, shall we? So a bit of history, how we got here. So back in 1999, so I think I started college in 1998. So that was my sort of first year within IT, really. So Windows installer, that was actually invented in 1999, which is obviously quite a long time ago. So it's been around for a while. So when you think about MSI, it's kind of an old dog. So we had MSI packages which we used to install applications. You could then use other packaging tools to customize those packages to be used for enterprise deployment. So they were called the Vhd files. So you could create your own installer files essentially to put your own logos on it, or put your own register settings in there, or put the start menu locations or icons and stuff like that. So mainly, I mean, I think when I started in IT many years ago, we used to use Norton Ghost to build desktops. This was way before the likes of sort of SCCM. So we essentially take a master image, install the application using Windows installer and MSI files, and then essentially just capture the image into a Norton Ghost image and deploy it onto lots of physical workstations. So I think my first job is like one PC a day or something crazy like that. When I think about it now, we can deploy like literally 10,000 a day. It's crazy how we've come along. So anyway, won't spend too much time on that, but that was back in 1999. And then we started to move towards sort of enterprise deployment. So in 1994, SMS 1.0 came along. So that's again primarily used to deploy your OS and applications. Then sort of developed through the ages, through 1999 we had SMS 2.0, and then System Management Server 2003 R2, and then on today. So today, obviously we've got 6.7 2012, which is in 2012, but we've got the very latest versions which are out there today. So I mean, I'm not a specialist in those applications, but from what I can see, they all do pretty much the same thing, because then they are responsible for deploying the OS and applications, package an MSI file into it, and then spit it out onto a physical workstation. So that really hasn't changed much over the years. If you look at what they're doing 10 years ago and what they're doing today, yes, they're doing it differently, but essentially it's exactly the same thing. Obviously, we're starting to see things change in the way we deploy those. So probably in maybe, I don't know, 5 years' time, they'll be defunct when we're all moving off to this sort of Intune and autopilot. So probably go back around 10 years. This is mainly how I was deploying Citrix environments. So we were using SCCM to build our master images. We had lots of task sequences created, which would go install applications, do stuff, set register settings, all that stuff. Then we get that master image, and then that's our master image that we used to deploy using Citrix, because that at the time was pretty much the only thing out there which would do the job that it could. So that's how pretty much I spent my career 10 years ago, just working with all the SCCM guys, building master images, going through that pain that I mentioned a short while ago around having to fight with application version compatibilities and stuff like that. And then entered AppV. So AppV was essentially application virtualization. So AppV enabled us to essentially stream an application onto an operating system. which went away all those application compatibility issues which I just mentioned. So what we could do, we could take an application, we could package it into an AppV package, and then we could just stream it or pre-stage it onto a host, and then the users could then use those applications. Really good technology, very powerful. I did quite a few projects using AppV and never really had many issues with it. I think a lot of people still use it today, especially within VDI environments, because it is kind of a virtualized application. So, but obviously it had a bit of infrastructure that you needed, so we'll cover that shortly. So that's AppV through the years. So as I mentioned, it came out in 2012. It's up to version 5.1 at the moment. This chart might be a bit out of date. I grabbed it off someone's blog, so I didn't write this. But essentially, it just shows how it's evolved through the ages. Adding Windows 10 support, merging stuff. There's lots of things which have changed. So that's AppV. But Microsoft announced AppV is going end of life. So it's going end of life. I think it's actually mainstream has already ended. So it's extended support until 2026, which is not that far away, really. When you think about sort of how long enterprise IT projects last, or even normal IT projects. So people need to start thinking about, well, what are they going to be doing going forward? So I think MSIX App Attach could be a replacement for AppV potentially. So at the moment, MSIX App Attach is only for Windows Virtual Desktop. So just to be clear, these MSIX App Attach and MSIX files, they're two different things. Okay, so you get your MSX files, they can be stored onto any physical machine. The App Attach bit is Windows Virtual Desktop only. So we will see App Attach going outside Windows Virtual Desktop. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's going to be end of life in 2026. We also have app layering. So this is the Citrix app layering bit. That's another technology which has become quite popular in recent years. Bit clunky. I've done a few projects about layering, and it's okay. It does its job, but it's a bit slow, a bit clunky, and not a huge fan of it, I'll be honest. But some people use it and love it, but personally, it's not for me. It's too complicated. I'm a simple person. I like to keep my environments nice and simple, and app layering can get quite complicated. You need different OS layers, platform layers, user layers, application layers, and you need to combine them all together, spit out images and stuff. It can get quite messy. So in 2018, Microsoft announced MSIX, which is going to be the replacement for MSI files. So that's going forward. That will replace MSI eventually. How long it's going to take, who knows? We don't know. It could take years. Depends how quickly people adopt the technology, essentially. So it is quite a baby when you think about it. So it's only announced in 2018. It only started becoming popular. I'd say it's not yet that popular. Hopefully within the next 12 to 2 years it will do, because it's got legs. So as people fix more and more issues with it, I'm hoping a lot of more companies will start to look at it more seriously. So what are the key features of MSIX? So it's the improved reliability for installations and on installations, mainly because it's in a container, so it doesn't interact mainly with all the bits of the operating system. So it's quite clean installs and on installs. It is built as a modern application packaging technology. So Microsoft have deployed it to work in a cloud environment. So you will find that it decreases network bandwidth compared to previous technologies. As I just mentioned, it's designed for modern systems in the cloud. And it installs the applications into a container, which is good. Number one, it keeps it clean. And number two, it's more reliable. And number three, it improves security. Because obviously, because it sits in a container, and then it's protected from the operating system essentially. So any attacks or hackers or stuff may have trouble getting into it, because it's a read-only attached Vhd essentially. So you need Windows 10 2004 to run the basic version of MSIX App Attach. The later features, you need Windows 10 20H2 which is to use the sim files, which we'll go through later. So, as I mentioned, why should we be looking at taking this seriously? Well, number one reason for me is clean golden images. The cleaner your golden images are, the easier they are to manage and deploy. We'll cover this in a bit, but essentially, if you've got a clean image where you don't actually have to install any applications, you can just rebuild and refresh your host every month, right, without any pain. As I mentioned, the applications have always been the pain. This is potentially a way of making that pain go away. Applications signed dynamically, so the user gets the application when they log on. If user A logs onto that host and he has access to it, he gets it. If user B logs onto that host and he doesn't have access to it, he doesn't get it. So you'll see this in action soon as well. There's less management overhead. So as mentioned, like with AppV, you need to deploy lots of different servers to support the infrastructure. You don't need anything with an MSIX App Attach. All you need is an Azure File Share and a Windows Virtual Desktop host pool, and you're done. That's all you need. Better security, because obviously I've just mentioned it's in a container. Future-proof environment, so someday MSI is going to be out of support. Don't know when, probably, I don't know, what would surprise me, maybe it's 10 years, but MSIX is the future of application deployment, so the earlier you adopt it, the better you kind of future-proof yourself. And as I mentioned many times, the applications are normally the hardest part to manage in a deployment, and this potentially can make it a lot easier for you. And so, scenario, imagine a scenario where you don't have any applications in your image. Using Nerdio, we can essentially re-image our hosts. So we've had a feature in Nerdio where we can schedule a re-imaging of a host. So if you think about your monthly patching at the moment, where someone has to go in, open up a host pool, install the patches, push it out, test it, all that stuff, we can do that automatically for you. All we have to do is to set schedule on the image host and basically just tell it to pull down the latest image from Azure, which will come with all the latest patches, and then just re-image it. So we can set that in a complete monthly basis. Do it weekly if you want, or do it daily. It's up to you. So if we have all our applications dynamically assigned, then what more do you want? Because that is a completely sort of hands-off patching process. So very, very, very impressive what you can do with that. So the downsides, obviously it's not all good. So it's still quite new, as I say, it's only introduced in 2018. I mean, MSIX App Attach as a technology only went into public preview a couple of months ago. So it is brand new technology, but if you can explore it, try and use it. Application compatibility can be an issue. So there are a few vendors out there which are deploying native MSX files, but not that many. That will change, I'm sure, over the future. Conversion rates can be a bit of a pain. So native out of the box, the conversion rates are quite low. I mean, some people report as low as 30 to 40% success rate. I mean, the applications that I've done as part of testing for this presentation, I didn't have any problems. I just picked some of the most popular applications and they all work fine. No issues whatsoever. So I guess it's just the awkward applications which people struggle with. So yeah, I mean, applications, people sometimes say 30-40% success rate, but there are third-party tools out there which can make that much better. So the guys over at AppCure, they're doing really, really good stuff. So you want to check those guys out, but they claim up to 90% success rate using their technology, which basically takes a snapshot of what you got and grabs it of a live running application and converts it to MSIX App Attach. So quite impressive. So if you're having any challenges, give those guys a shout. And also, if you use the package support framework to get more success, so that 40% rate that I mentioned, I think Tim Mangan's reported that using that you can get up to like between 60 and 80% with your application. So it is going to get better over time. It is a new technology, so just let's see how it goes. So what do we need to get up and running? We just need a Windows 10 2.4 minimum enterprise single session or multi-session host. We go through all this, but you need to have your session host ability to have read access to the file share, which is hosting the applications. Obviously, they essentially mount a Vhd file, so they need to read that Vhd file to be able to mount it into the operating system. But I'll go through that with you.
We need Azure File Share, which again we're going to demo. We need a Windows Virtual Desktop host pool, and you need to have a validation host pools enabled on that as well. And also, if you want to take advantage of the Nerdio features, you need version 2.4.0 or newer, or the very latest version. We just added the ability to add multiple MSIX apps into the same Vhd file. As mentioned, permissions, very, very important. A lot of people get this wrong, but this is not going to work unless you don't do this. So you need the minimum permission is the storage file data SMB share reader on your FSLogix file share. Again, I'll show you how to do this. There's an easy trick where you can do that, which is basically create yourself an AD group and let that replicate into Azure AD, add your users and your WVD host into that AD group. And then when you build a new host or when you get your users, just whack them into the AD group and then they're automatically assigned to that. But we'll go through that in a later slide. So what does it look like in the hood? So essentially what you can do, you can just get an MSX file and you can rename it to a zip file. And this is what you'll see. So what in here, again, I'm going to show you this, but in fact, I'll show you now. It is the third. You'll get a bit of hands-on. So in here, I've just got a load of MSX files. So all I can do, right, so we'll go here. Let's find one, shall we? And just have a look and see what it looks like. So see. No, it's not that one. Let's create a new file in here. Let's take Notepad++. Okay, so this is an MSX file that I prepared earlier. So we just rename to the third. Okay, so let's send this to a zip file. And what we can do then is here. So this is it inside the file. So it's just files. Okay, so if you look in here, this is a security code integrity, and in here we've got our icons that we need in there, and then we just got desktop icons in there. See, it's nothing magic, it's just all the file system files, the register files that's needed to run the application. So nothing crazy going on. And as I mentioned this, so what those files are, so you've got the app.block.mxl file, which is the hashes. So just to make sure that no one modifies that file, because as we'll go through shortly, you need to assign it with a certificate. We've got the manifest.xml file, which you need to deploy and update it, and the certificate file was generated. So nothing crazy, so quite simple. So as mentioned, so how do we get into an MSX file? So we need to package the application. So there's a free tool from Microsoft that you can use. It's the Dmsx packaging tool. Use a packaging VM similar as you would do with any other packaging technology to keep it as clean as possible. So we can convert an existing application using an exe, an MSI, or an AppV application. Okay, and as I mentioned, there's the package support framework available to fix any problematic applications, but also Acure or any other third party if you're having some issues. So the package support framework. So if you're used to shim files within AppV, that's similar to what that does. It basically enables you to put fixes in there if you're having trouble with your applications. I must admit, I've not done a lot with it. So there's a link on there if you want to go and check that out. But if you're having issues with can't find DLLs or the program's trying to write into the wrong folder or something like that, there are fix-ups available. Which you can use the package support framework to inject into your MSX package. So let's get to it. So we're gonna package an application just to show you how simple and easy it is. So what I've got here, I've got a packaging VM. All I've done is I've installed the packaging support framework, which is down here. So let's take this. So we're going to go in here.
And we're gonna pick, what shall we pick today? So I've downloaded some software. I'm gonna pick Firefox to be boring. Okay, so package application. So we're just going here. We're creating a package for an application. It does a quick check to make sure that I've got the driver installed and it's not running Windows Update, and also just to make sure that there's no reboot pending. So that's all good. And then essentially all I'm going to do is I'm going to point it to my existing install file. So let's go here, see software, Firefox setup 87, and I'm going to assign it with a certificate that I've already created, and I'll show you in a couple of slides how I created that certificate. So let me just get this here. Okay, and then the password that I use for the certificate. Good. Okay, so my package, Firefox, display name is going to be Nerdio test, and then version I'm just going to 1000. Package description, Firefox. Okay, next. So you see the installer automatically kicks off. So basically what that's doing now, that's grabbing all the changes which are happening to the operating system. So any registry settings, any extra files that it puts in, anything like that, it automatically looks at them and uses those to make up the MSX file. I've already got one there. So, but yeah, normally you'd see, yep, so I just click on upgrade. Okay, and then that's it done. So click finish. No. And then that's it. So it says this is finished running. Yep. Okay. And then that's the executable that it's noticed that that's used to launch it. So click next. Yep, I'm done. There's no services. So MSIX App Attach can look at services. So if your application stores any services, it will capture that also. Create the package, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Really, really simple. So that took me, what, 3 minutes? So obviously there are more complicated applications out there, but yeah, it's that simple. So I can now take that MSX file to the next stage, which we'll do shortly, and basically upload it into Nerdio to essentially use it as an application within our host pool. Right, so let's go. Okay, so that's simple. Right, storage. So we need a Azure File Share. Highly recommended premium if you can do. Obviously, it's better performance, better SLA, and better Iops. You could also use NetApp ANF files if you want to, if you have a bigger requirement, or you've got lots and lots of applications. But I'll go through all the stuff on the next slide. Or if you're doing, if you want to use storage spaces direct, but I wouldn't really recommend that. If you can do, go with a native Azure File Share or NetApp ANF. So Iops Requirements, so this is from the Microsoft site. So steady state Iops for an application, obviously, again, depends on your application, but average application about 1 IOP. Machine boot sign-in while it's doing the attach, probably around 10 IOPs. So you need to factor that into your calculations as well. Just as I say, so an Azure File Share will give you about 100,000 IOPs. So you need to be running a lot of applications before you start running into any problems. As mentioned, so you can use Azure File for NetApp files. So I'd only imagine if you use NetApp files, if you have some really intensive applications or you're using a lot of users. So minimum deployment is obviously 4 terabytes for NetApp files. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but yeah, unless you're in a really complicated environment and you are hitting some limits on Azure files, maybe then you should look at NetApp files. But it could also be for the replication as well. The replication built in is a bit better for NetApp files. So if you've got SLAs for backup and restores stuff, then it may be worth looking at that as well. Yeah, I've covered that before. So that's what sits within the MSX file. So you've got your XML files, your manifest files, and your certificate files.
Okay, so let's now create in domain join a file share. So I've recorded the demo because it takes a bit of a while. So let's see what happens, shall we? So essentially what we're going to do here within Nerdio, we're going to create a new Azure file share and do the domain join for it. Okay, so normally if you do this outside of Nerdio console, you have to run loads of PowerShell scripts to do this. So what we can do within the Nerdio console, we can basically go into the integrations. And then in there, we've got an Azure Files. We can just create a new Azure file share. Okay. So we're going to create a brand new storage account. We're going to give it a specific name because obviously they all need to be independent names. So that's just a random one that I created. We select our resource group, our location, which for me is going to be UK South. The performance, which is default to premium, and then the share name, which we're going to call MSIX App. Okay. And then the division capacity, which I'll just leave at standard 100 gig. And then we can also add in. So you remember before where I mentioned about the share, we can add this in here now and it'll do it all for us. Okay, so that AD group that I've already pre-created, I just put that in there, which means all my hosts and users will automatically get added. So the clever bit is the join AD. So we automatically do the AD join. It creates a temporary VM, which does it. And we can also enable SMB multi-channel as well as part of the whole process. So that gives it a lot better performance if you do that as well. And that is it, essentially. Now, if anyone's deployed Azure Files and done AD join and configured the permissions before, they'll note that it's quite complicated, probably takes a bit of time to do. And using this literally takes 20 minutes, then you can go and sit back, have a brew, speak to your family, relax, put your feet up, do some other stuff, and Nerdio will do it all for you. So this is a bit probably where I'm going to fast forward a bit because it's just doing what it needs to do. So as you see what it's doing here, so it's doing the domain join for you automatically. So that's going to create a VM which will run the script for us. Yeah, so it's automatically done that on the server 2016 VM. To the third, so it'll take 15 minutes, and then that's it. So once it's done that, it's going to take that VM and it's automatically going to delete that VM for you and delete the NIC and delete the storage that it used for that as well. So pretty cool stuff, right? Go back to the presentation. Hang on, it's disappeared. Here we go. Oh, right. Okay, so where were we? Yeah. Where's it go? Okay. Right. Okay, so let me just get this in here. Okay. So let's do this from here. Okay, PowerPoint's been a bit weird with me, so we'll do it this way. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do now, so we've done the domain join share. Okay, so as you can tell, this is what it's doing. So it's doing the delete virtual machine, delete network interface, and at the end of it, this is what you're going to get. So you have a AD domain join VM, that's ready to use for the MSIX App Attach files. Okay, so as mentioned, storage recommendations. So always put it as close to the host as possible. So your VNet, your resource location, it is going to be quite ultra fast performance. So essentially, if you can do, stick it in the VNet, same location. There's also some AV exclusions that you should put in. So if you're running any local AV on your hosts, they're the ones that you should put in to stop any crashing or freezing or something or whatever. Normally antivirus can cause havoc on your operating systems. And as we covered, make sure all your host user accounts have got read-only access to the Azure File Share that's been created. Okay, so certificate assignments. So essentially all the
applications need to be signed by certificate. This is to protect the security. It creates a hash, and it has an XML file which contains all those hashes. So it knows when you launch the application if it's been modified or not. Okay, so it's really important. It won't work without it, so you need to make sure that you have the certificate. Your certificate can be a self-signed, which is what I've used for testing, or you can have an enterprise CA if you want to, or if you really want it, you can have a publicly signed certificate, but obviously that's going to cost you a bit of money. So these are the PowerShell commands that I've used to create a certificate. They're on the Microsoft site if you need them. Also, I'll show you how to create them using MSIX Hero as well if we get time. So essentially, that just creates a self-signed certificate that we use. I then take that self-signed certificate, export it to a PFX file, and put a password on it. And then once I've done that, I install that certificate, and then I extract the certificate file, the CER file. And that's the file that I use to do my MSIX App Attach signing. Okay, so that's how that's there. So once I've imported it, I just do an export and then just export the CER file. Okay. So again, using Nerdio, we can essentially install the certificates. So let me just load up the Nerdio console for you. Using my screen, then I will drag it across. Got it here. No, I haven't. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, just gonna sign in using the right account. So you can also do these certificates via group policy or manually if you want to on your host pools. But essentially what we do in Nerdio, I can just take these certificates. Okay, so here I've uploaded the certificate, but what I can do is I can go in here, choose my certificate. Here's one that I just created before as a test. So create that, upload it. Okay, and then it should show up in a minute. Okay, refresh that in a minute. I should show up in it. Anyway, essentially what happens is once you've uploaded the certificate, we can basically go into the host pool. Let me go into host pool here. Manage here, manage, MSIX Attach, and then I can install certificates. Right. So essentially, did I try that one again? So essentially what that does, it gets that certificate and it automatically adds it to all the host pools for you. And then it puts it into the trusted certificate store for you. So saves you having to do it either by group policy or anything else. But yeah, really, really good stuff. Because as I mentioned before, if you don't have the certificate, the application won't launch. Okay. Yeah. So I think you probably got to see one from a previous one that I did. So yeah, that's all it does. It only takes what, 6:28, about 5 minutes to do. So if you've got like 50 host pools or 50 hosts, you can imagine how easy and quick that would be. So that covers. So where we are now, we've created an MSX file. We've created an Azure File Share. We've created the certificate. So now we need to upload the MSX file into Nerdio. So again, we can do this via the GUI. So let's jump over to the GUI and let's do that just as a test. I've already got one in there just to show you the MSX in action, but let me get that for you. So here we have our images. Okay, so I've already got some in there as I mentioned. So to upload it, we've got two options. We can upload the so we pick our storage location. So let's pick that. And then so we can upload the MSX file as it is in its default state. And then what Nerdio will do, it will automatically expand that, create and expand the Vhd for you. So it saves you having to do that process. So that's a big time saver for you. especially because it's a bit of an awkward process to do it. If you don't use tools like MSIX Hero, you have to go and manually create the Vhd file, to run a couple of Powershell commands to expand it, so it gets a bit messy. Or there are PowerShell scripts out there to do it as well, but we can do it this way as well. So, say for example, I stuck that one, I can just then pick that, pick the certificate file that we use to sign the application with. That's very, very important. And then again, that will go away and essentially expands that Vhd file for you. So, if I just do that, that'll then go to that. I'm not going to wait here and do that because the process takes around 20 minutes for it to do. But there's another way as well. So we can also, if we have a pre-prepared VHD or SIM file image, let me just go back into here. We can also upload those files as well. Okay, so again, I can test, put the storage location, and then it will look for either a VHD file or a SIM file or a VHDX file, and it'll load those files natively as well. So pretty good stuff. Okay, let's see how we're doing there. So as I mentioned, these the ones that I did earlier, they're already in there, just as a test. So let's move on to the next slide. It's going to mention that's just what I've been through. So you can just select your default MSX file or VHD file, and that's a demo of that which is done. So once we've uploaded our VHD files, or they're now in the correct format, we've got our certificates. Now we need to assign the applications to a host pool. Okay, so what we do here is, again, we go back into here. So we've got our applications here. So what I've done for this demo, essentially, I created a finance app which contains a number of applications. Okay, so to assign an image to a host pool, all we have to do, go into our workspaces, go into our host pool. So I've got one here called finance. Go to manage, MSIX App Attach. So I've got these here now, but say example, I wanted to delete. Can we try and delete? Yeah, let's delete. Yeah. Let's go do it just so I can show you. Yeah. Okay. So what's going to happen is I'm going to pull that down. So this is essentially looking at the other MSX there. So you can see I've now got my 7-zip there because it knows it's there. So let's pick that here, and then let's pick Firefox. Actually, no, let's pick 7-zip again. It's a package 7-zip. No, I want 7-zip. Okay, yep, 7-zip. Okay. So if I wanted to, if I had multiple applications in there, I could just select all of those. Okay. Oof. That's it. Done. So the next time anyone logs into that application, logs onto that host pool, they will automatically get those applications. All right. So just to prove that I'm not lying, let's go over to our host pools and log on. So now I may have to reboot this host because normally when you assign a host an application, you have to reboot those. But let's have a look. Let's see. Right. So this is my one here. So let's go to here. Got about 7 minutes left, which is perfect timing. Okay, so I've logged onto the host pool. So what we'll see here is, these are our files here. Okay, so these are our MSX files. So just to prove I've got nothing installed. Yeah, see, there's no Firefox, Notepad+, or 7-zip. Okay, and we can launch a disk manager, and what you'll see is the Vhd file. Okay. So, yeah, so these here, these are the attached. So this is my FSLogix profile, and these here are the MSIX files that I've attached. So as soon as I log off, they'll disappear again. Okay, so that's that one. So remote apps, again, we can do exactly the same thing with remote apps. I'm running a bit low time, so I won't show that one, but essentially it's exactly the same process. You just go to a remote app, create a remote app, and point it to the MSIX App Attach file. So live demo, obviously we've done that. Will it work? Yep, it did work. So all good. As I mentioned, we can convert to SIM format as well. So SIM format is a tool which is a bit more better on utilization, better Iops, better memory. So Ryan Mangan did some testing around this, so thanks to Ryan for that. But these just show the application detached launch times a bit lower when using SIM files. So if you've got a big environment, or if you're really bothered about performance, then definitely take a look at SIM files. So just starting to wrap up here now, but basically some hints, tips that I've come across while I've been doing testing and while speaking to other people, and check your permissions and make sure they're correct. That seems to be a very, very popular problem. Check the applications always work natively, obviously, so you can install the MSX file into a normal desktop, Windows 10. So just install that, make sure it works correctly. Ensure the certificates used to sign the application deployed on the host VM. Obviously, we showed you how to do that using Nerdio. If you've got problems with the application and packaging process, just give the package support framework a try, or give the guys over at Cure a call, see if they can help you. One tool which is quite good, which I'll go over very quickly, is MSIX Hero. That essentially enables you to create Vhd files and certificate files a lot easier. Yeah, let me do that for you very quickly, since we have a few minutes left. If you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat window, and I'll try and answer them. So where are you? Yep, so this is MSIX Hero. So in there, if you go to, you can do stuff like create a Vhd file easily. So I can go in here. Yep, so we just basically point it to the MSX file. Where is it? Yeah, so we just get to that one there. It also extracts the certificate for you as well, which is quite cool. And then basically click on that, the output, so test, and then it goes and creates it for you. So that's quite simple and easy to do. I'll just go back to the presentation while it's going. As you mentioned, there are a few more community tools as well. So Tim Mangan has got the PSF tooling tool. And also Ryan Mangan has got a really cool tool, which is the log output tool. That essentially tells you what's going on. So really, really useful for troubleshooting. So if you have any issues or just want to see what's going on in the background, definitely check that out. And also there's a few books available. So if you want to learn more about MSIX packaging, give Tim Mangan's a book a look at. So it's all about the packaging fundamentals. Also Ryan Mangan has done a book as well, which you can catch on Amazon, and that's a really good read. So I suggest you check that out as well. That is perfect timing, the end of my presentation. So if anyone's got any questions, please just pop them in the chat window. If not, just contact me offline, and I'll be happy to sort of answer any questions and go through anything. Or if you've got any questions about Nerdio or anything, please just reach out to myself or Baz, and we'll be happy to help and assist you. So question, the Nerdio toolset, is that available as a trial? Yes, it is. So we've got a couple of products, Nerdio Manager for WVD and Nerdio Manager for MSP. If you want to have a play about with Nerdio Manager with WVD, you can sign up for it via the Azure Marketplace, and then we can also help you set that up as well. But if you've got any more questions around that, just reach out to myself or Baz privately, and we'll be happy to help and assist you with that. Okay, so we're pretty much bang on time at 8 o'clock. If anyone's got any more questions, please reach out to myself and I will be happy to help you. So I'm going to end it there. Have a good evening and hopefully speak to you soon. Bye-bye.